I'm Jenny Carlson here with Scott Wright. We're in Mobile, Alabama, where Oklahoma State has defeated South Alabama 44-7. And Scott, really the only drama in this one was whether the Cowboys would get a shutout. Didn't quite get it done, but still, defense was, there were a lot of storylines today, but defense played really well, Scott.
Yeah, they really did. Everybody was waiting to see when Mason Rudolph was going to become the Cowboys' all-time leading passer, which he did in the second quarter. And the defense finally gave up those first points of the game in the fourth quarter on a late garbage time touchdown. But other than that, a really impressive performance from them. Linebacker, they were really thin. Some injuries during the week. Had Calvin Bunnage get ejected because of a targeting penalty in the third quarter. Had them all the way down to Kirk Tucker, who was their third team at the quote-unquote star linebacker, that hybrid position that they use there on the outside. So a senior guy that's been around and really came through and had an incredible game for him on the road in a tough situation.
Yeah, for sure. Linebackers thin, but 4 sacks for the Cowboys. A week after, they only had 1 against Tulsa. 9 tackles for loss. Really, overall, a good performance by them on the road in a place where weird stuff was happening. The scoreboard right behind us over our shoulders here went out eventually in the second half.
Lost the play clock in the first quarter.
All sorts of craziness going on. So a really solid performance by the defense, including, as you mentioned, being really thin at linebacker. But let's talk about Mason Rudolph for a second, Scott. You mentioned he becomes the school's all-time leading passer, passing Brandon Weeden on that list with career passing yards. And it really seems like it was only a matter of time for him to get that record. But the way he performed tonight on Friday night, what impressed you about him?
Well, just the maturity continues to impress me. You see it week in and week out in practices, in games. He's just so level-headed. Nothing seems to rattle him at all. He knows where his receivers are going to be. You see him overthrow a guy like Jalen McCleskey, who was wide open down the middle of the field at one point tonight, and that shocks you more than in just about anything else that he does. He can make all the throws out there. Just such an impressive talent, and to play as maturely as he does now as a senior and being the leader that he is. Just incredibly impressive all the way around.
Here's some numbers for you. 25 of 38 tonight, 335 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Adds to another 300-yard game in the opener, 3 touchdowns in that game, no interceptions. He's only had 1 play where he's been put on the hook for a turnover. It was a fumble in the Tulsa game, so no interceptions at this point, completing over 70% of his passes. And tonight, Scott, South Alabama really forced the Cowboys to look to throw, which you might have been surprised by. They really tried to shut off the run game and did a pretty good job of that. We saw a couple gash runs, but really it was about the passing game for the Cowboys. And they were able to take advantage, particularly in the intermediate passing. We saw, a lot of shorter, 15, 20 yards. Seems like that's just an expansion of what we saw seen out of Mason Rudolph and this receiver core, really.
Yeah, exactly. The guys obviously looked very comfortable in going to that part of their attack to use it against this defense. We saw Tyron Johnson making some plays on some intermediate out routes. Some guys across the middle. James Washington took a 15 or 20-yard pass and splits the defensive backs and goes for a touchdown early in the game because he always scores from 60 yards or more. That's just what James Washington does. But the guys were not surprised at all to see South Alabama defend them this way, which I personally was. I think of this team, I automatically think you've got to stop that passing attack. And South Alabama stuck with what they do, and that's to try to stop the run and play some single coverage on some of the best receivers in the country. So the 44 points not a big surprise whenever you think about what they were asking those defensive backs to do.
Surely, and let's look at those receiver numbers. 5 guys with 4 or more catches. Marcel Aitman leads the way with 5. He gets into the end zone for the first time since coming back from that injury a year ago. Had 2 touchdowns. Would have had 3, Scott. He just missed on a fade route in the first half on the first, I think, second drive that the Cowboys had. Before we let you go, let's talk a little bit about what this game means moving forward, Scott. Friday night here in Mobile, Cowboys play next Saturday at Pitt, another road game, 2 non-conference away games for the Cowboys. How do you feel about that Pitt game after tonight?
Well, you've got to feel good about what the defense did. You know what your offense is going to give you every week. The big question is what happens now with the linebacker depth. That's a big issue, you know, for a lot of different reasons. Gundy talked about how important it is to have that depth, just because the offense plays so fast and they score so fast that you've got to have the extra guys to come in and give guys a breather from time to time. So linebacker is going to be interesting to watch, to see how soon Kenneth Edison-Magruder can come back. Calvin Bunnage will be out for the first half of the Pitt game no matter what, because of his ejection tonight. So you'll have Kirk Tucker right back in there involved again. You've got to get those guys, they've got to be ready to go. Your secondary was solid tonight. They still haven't been really tested, but they've held up really well whenever they've had their backs against the wall. So you know, that's those will be the things to watch for as you go into on the road against a Power 5 program.
Yeah, and the Cowboys do have that extra day to prepare, considering they're going to have to be figuring some things out defensively, especially in that linebacker group. Probably a good thing for Glenn Spencer to get that extra day. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere in the Oklahoman and every day on newsok.com.